took it upon myself to hunt them down and publish their identities for the world to witness, so that the people who know them personally will keep their children away.
Reproduce and protect our offspring. Guard our descendants. Welcome to God Cult.
This is a call to action disguised as a cancellation. It is my hope that it will bring the maximum amount of eyes and ears to crucial issues in our society. Let this video be the example by which we as influencers can make digestible content for our audience while addressing much more important matters. Thank you.
Fuck you, I survived.
We can argue legal semantics all we want. We're not lawyers.
Semantics. We have to look at exact definition, Max. This is the problem with this situation. You're going in with evidence that can't be 100% corroborated. You're going in with allegations as an evidence.
Why
are we talking to your lawyer, ChatGPT, right now? Like, what the f*** is going on?
Like, right here, bro.
Judge.
You know if I make a video on this, this is what I have to work with. How do you honestly think I can take your side?
There's a whole bunch of stuff I'm angry about. I don't like how he hides behind his victims either. Or not his victim, but the victim, excuse me. I don't like how he hides behind the victims either. Every time he gets told about the doxing, well, they said that it was okay to do it. You hide it. This is your channel, Max. You hold responsibility of what goes on in this channel.
I agree.
So, I just completed a 30-minute video called Silencing All Survivors that addresses pretty much everything. It addresses criticisms. It addresses my approach. It includes apologies. It includes a call to action on Camden. A little bit of information about everything. But I showed it to some trusted friends and the survivors. Some people loved it. Some people had a few criticisms, and then some people hated it.
Hi everyone, it's me again, and today we are talking about someone who has been highly requested in my comments and any email and things of the sort, as well as the video that I've worked on for the longest consecutive period of time in my entire YouTube career thus far. We are talking about someone who goes by the name of Mamamax, who made content on hunting down people online who were inappropriate. We'll get into that more down the line because I can't necessarily use the proper terminology this early in the video. Really quick, links, sources, ways to support the channel, all down below. Social media, Patreon, Amazon, wishlist, YouTube memberships, anything of the sort, and the vast set of sources that I have used for this video. If there are too many sources, I will have instead a Google Doc with all the videos linked in them, as well as the books I use and things of the sort. I'm going to try to avoid subjects in depth that involve picking through allegations, because then we end up in like believability politics, which for me personally is not the goal and has been the goal of a lot of other channels that have been covering it. So if that's what you're into, I guess, go seek those videos out. I will also include many trigger warnings before we go any further. We have predatory behavior, child trafficking, sexual coercion, manipulation, sexual assault with children and adults, and general allegations and discussions, and I guess mockery of those allegations as well will kind of come into this conversation at some point or another. So if this video is not for you, please do not proceed further. I do not want you to go into something that you are not comfortable with. For those of you who are not familiar with my The Rhetoric of series, it is not necessarily a deep dive on the entire history of someone. Rather, it is an analysis of how someone approaches their particular niche, videos, controversies, etc., and the response to criticism in general with the use of rhetoric in those interactions. I source secondary sources from academic sourcing and things of the sort. If you are looking into more of that just typical deep dive timeline video, essentially most of my sources are of that type of content, and I leave them all down for you below if you wish to peruse them, and they are all active links that you can just like get to the videos with. So I started this script, I believe it'll be 4 weeks on Tuesday, and it's Sunday right now. I had completely different sections at the start, and the structure lended itself to a much shorter video style that I had before. And I actually, like, for the first time ever, I think, completely threw out a script and started over. And here are the tentative sections that I have. If I feel like they are too little or too many, I will condense them or add them. It will be in the timeline down below. So here are the parts of the video. So we have main parts and subsections. Part 1, who is Mamamax? Part 1.1, we have the early career. Part 1.2, we have predator hunting. Part 1.3, we have Max's own allegations. And we have 1.4, we have Spencer. Then part 2, we have the demise, where it went wrong. Part 2.1, demanding YouTube and influencer involvement. Part 2.2, Nicholas Deorio, Mutahar, Some Ordinary Gamer, Chud Logic, and Xylie Gets Real. Part 2.3, apology video breakdown, and part 2.4, Max's Patreon response. Part 3, we have the sensationalization of serious allegations, with 3.1 being the charging of protect children that is fuel for other causes, and the use, and 3.2 is the use of stylistic elements in messaging, and then we will conclude the video. Buckle in, get a snack. I don't know how long this is going to be yet, but this is by far the longest script I've ever written, so keep that in mind. I suggest microwave popcorn with all dressed popcorn seasoning, or the white cheddar one. That would be my recommendation. Part 1, who is Mamamax? Mamamax is a content creator who went through several phases of content prior to settling on the content dedicated to exposing internet predators for the sake of trying to avoid some form of age restriction, because it's been happening to a lot of other people. The specific people that he was looking into towards the end of this whole debacle are pedophiles, and I'm only gonna say that once, and the rest will either be censored or I'm gonna use predators. Just FYI. So these videos were highly edited collections of evidence relating to these people. Most of the videos that Max released were age restricted, demonetized, removed, or blocked, so he would usually kind of result to Patreon crowdfunding to sustain the work that he was doing. Some were saying that he was making upwards of $16,000 a month at the peak of the Patreon. The biggest investigation that is in the works currently, allegedly, and the current one that has caused this whole thing is on someone named Camden Gerard Davis, who Max describes as someone who was trying to make who had some sort of werewolf cult, mostly run through online. And it was being done through apps like Whisper, Wattpad, and other such kind of anonymous, and Kick as well, which Kick is no longer active. And I think it might have been because we kind of figured out what was going on. This video is going to be full of so many disclaimers, because with this whole Mamamax debacle and the investigation, there are a lot of people who covered this who were very close to Max and intimate in this whole sort of debacle, but also other people who were on the outside who, if you look into the content that they made, dedicated like in streams, like easily 25 to 30 hours in a lot of the cases. So if I feel like I missed something, there is generally a point where it's like I can't sit through the content anymore. I think I've consumed at minimum 4 hours of Mamamax content essentially daily or at least 5 days a week. For like the whole time I've been doing this. And even me, I think I have like 6 hours of streams on it. So I want to make something clear. The investigation in this space and revolving around all of this is extremely muddy and messy. And I'm personally not the best at diving super deep into internet and like finding certain things and connections between platforms, deleted content, cross-referencing internet archives. I'm more familiar with like library archives and academic search engines, which are not the same. I actually want to take this time to thank YouTuber Xylie Gets Real, who, you know, to some is a bit of a controversial figure. I've seen it in my comments, but I just need to like give credit where credit's due. Like, she has been so helpful in the DMs, has helped me find archive sites for all of Max's content that I was missing, how to find certain interviews that I needed to look for research, how to find all of kind of what's been going on. She's also helped me like figure out the Spencer timeline and the way that I wanted to tell it, because I kept getting things kind of confused what year it was and how old she is and all that kind of stuff, which we get to obviously in section 2.4 or 1.4 rather. But I wanted to thank her right now because this was an entirely different beast compared to the type of content that I was used to making. So section 1.1, we're going to go through Max's early career. Mamamax went through many phases in his content creation and appeared to be the type who would kind of throw anything at the wall to see if it sticks. Max, a creator inspired by kind of early to mid 2010s commentary videos, took inspiration from Filthy Frank in reference to the kind of Papa Franku kind of meme that he used to do, and that is actually where the name Mamamax came from. Max did many different types of videos, from these sorts of YouTube poops kind of that he called YouTube hell. I am not super familiar with what those types of things are in general because I wasn't online yet. He also did sort of story videos, he did hentai reviews, he did game reviews in the video essay format, and then kind of a sort of commentary within those kinds of video essays. And finally, he did the pedophile hunting videos, which began to move from 2020 forward, mostly kind of infiltrating children's chat rooms, apps, things that either were a misstep from app developers and developed these sorts of apps for kids that were very quick to be flooded with predators, or people who developed these apps for those people in the first place and masked them as something appropriate for kids. I'm not necessarily sure which way it swings in all those different circumstances, but I digress. Max made very controversial content and had a video taken down for harassment and bullying, and it's because he doxes the predators he finds in the videos, amongst other things as well. I was watching a Paige Christie stream, which she's been teasing a 3.5 hour long video, and I wonder if it's this, where she said that Max was known for hashtag pedotube, where he conflated YouTube taking down a video where he literally showed the phone number of an alleged predator and was trying to rally people into this grand scheme of how like YouTube protects pedophiles. But that will kind of get into the next section. Section 1.2, we have predator hunting. Mamamax moved to predator hunting videos, but it also extends to pedophiles, but I'm going to refrain from saying that too much, as I mentioned before, because I don't want a strike. This whole switch up started once Mamamax moved to a sort of... There are times when people get so lost in their intentions that they lose sight of the reality behind their goals, and I really do think with Mamamax, this is one of those instances. Predator hunting, for some reason, in the recent few years has grown in popularity on the platform, along with videos in general of people who just mistreat and potentially abuse partners. Some big cases that have come up in the past couple of years in this sort of realm of YouTube have been mishandled as well. One big prime example, one of the most famous ones, was with Onision and Chris Hansen, where Chris Hansen's then assistant mishandled a laptop with evidence and the FBI could no longer use it. And when the first EDP 445 sting happened, where someone did what Mamamax does, where they pretended to be a minor and then tried to kind of meet up with EDP 445 and everything, but then like police never properly got involved, and that was a whole other thing. So I always say here on the channel that social media has perpetuated very harmful messaging in regard for like the way that it disregards the need for professionalism and professional education in a lot of circumstances, and people think that they can just like Google the answers to everything without any training or any kind of knowledge beyond superficial that they can gather for handling serious issues. And we get into this later. Mamamax is 100% one of these people. He literally uses ChatGPT for legal advice. This is because when you're trying to handle serious topics that involve evidence, legal proceedings, trying to find answers with ChatGPT is not only incomprehensibly stupid, it is just outright dangerous and irresponsible. But as I mentioned, we will touch on that later. Mamamax, at the end of the day, came into this as this guy who wanted to make films on YouTube. He's not a cop. He's not a lawyer. He's not a private investigator, paralegal, judge, anything like that. Even in his noble pursuit, his true passion appears to be for artistic representation or interpretations, and that is something that he criticizes people who do not like his content for all the time, for not liking his particular artistic representation. In his coverage for Camden, this becomes very prevalent as there seems to be very limited, tangible passion for evidence and professionalism in this case. Spoiler alert for my feelings on this whole debacle. I would say that this is just a whole group of hens clucking, trying to play who could be the most logical private investigator FBI agent of the world. Everything's a mess, and that is why this has been so difficult to cover, because it's also constantly developing, as opposed to if I've covered these things after the fact a bit more, I can kind of see how it all played out and go back from there. This cult, supposedly run by Camden Gerard Davis, went by multiple names according to Spencer, who again we also get to later, and was most commonly known as the Guild of Divinity, and allegedly had a merch store online. Max also hunted other predators besides Camden. Allegedly, Max would gather evidence and, as I mentioned before, would expose people through very unconventional means, alike to the EDP 445 sting. This included pretending to be This included pretending to be a young girl and sending pictures of his ass in tight leggings. I'll let you live with that one. So when Max would find proof on these people, he would present evidence along with typically the occasional docs in the subject of this video. This, however, would all be intertwined with a sort of avant-garde, dramatized style, and many criticized the format of these videos in the presentation because they felt like it would get really lost in the sauce, if you will. Max would store evidence available to the public in these things called mega folders, which appears to be a site that is kind of just like a sort of like a publicly accessible Google Drive. This included graphic images and alleged private information, and that component of it specifically only gets darker, and I'll have to get to that deeper into the video because of the amount of context that you need surrounding it on the other people involved. I know. This is beyond the point of just someone who just deals with evidence poorly and maybe didn't contact the right authorities. Max's representations have gone too far in the past with genuinely having videos, and I'm not going to put that in, obviously, where he simulates CSA, which, if I'll say once, is child sexual assault. The actor was an adult, but still not necessary for a goddamn YouTube video. Please spare me and your ego. Unnecessary. The message doesn't become more clear. It just makes me think you're weird. I don't know about y'all. But anyway, it gets worse, and I'll explain in the next section, 1.3, Max's allegations. This section is not going to be in nearly enough detail for what most people would probably be looking for. I'm going to recommend instead you watch FPS Diesel's video on Mamamax because it outlines each of the different allegations. Firstly, the commentary on the allegations has been messy to the point of outright sloppiness. Combined with the wide-scale wiping of Max's content and social media, plus the holes in some of the stories and other unsubstantiated counterclaims, such as Max saying that Xylie made a fake Facebook on him and things like that, this makes me somewhat not comfortable on kind of unpacking this particular component because I don't necessarily think this is that relevant in the super grand scheme, but it's also definitely relevant in the character formation that you will have from what I'm telling you or what is available on the internet. And is a piece of this whole thing. I also feel that one of the allegations is from this person, Xylie, and that's the only one that I'm going to really discuss in detail. Well, not even that much detail, really, but it's the situation with Max and this Xylie person is very strange because and I don't know how else to say it, it's like very incel behavior-esque, but it's something that's really hard for me to process when I'm looking at all of this because it's eerily similar to something that a way that someone had acted towards me for a while and something that I had to deal with and I just don't feel like I've been able to process it enough to where I can really sit and look at things that are very similar to it. I just don't have it in me to really go into this section. If you think that makes me a bad content creator, if you think that makes me incompetent in doing something like this, then go fucking watch Chud Logic. Go watch Chud Logic, go watch FPS Diesel, go watch Nicholas Deorio, because this is really this whole thing is genuinely tested my limits a lot more than I would have ever wanted it to. To briefly summarize, one of the most widespread allegations, that's Xylie, is not an ex of Max's, rather it is someone who he never actually dated but was super obsessed with in high school. Xylie and Max knew each other in high school and were seemingly good friends. The nature of the relationship seems to be constantly contested by either side and stars on everyone who's talking about this.
Xylie is not one of my exes. Xylie has never abused me. Xylie is a young woman that I fell for in high school and that I obsessed over during my time in the military. This is when I was 18. I made decisions that I obviously regret. But with that said, Xylie is painting a very different picture of our relationship together during these times to make me look more like a creep, obviously. That is always the name of the game with them, I guess. And I'm going to go through it with you step by step to show you where I believe she's being disingenuous.
And here's the thing that Max can't seem to address or ever acknowledge. When you're a girl and you have these guys that are emotionally very strained, who are seemingly quite reckless with themselves and the others around them at times, who are negligent towards how their actions can impact other people, will constantly threaten things like self-harm, like ending their lives, like doing all of these different things. Girls in these sorts of situations with men, because of also the dynamics that present themselves there, will often do things or act in a way that is not authentic to themselves in a worry about what will happen to the other party or the effect that it could have on them down the line if they were to like lash out or something. And I think that's something that nobody's mentioned, but it's also because 98.8% of the people who've covered this are like dudes who, you know, I guess don't understand that kind of concept. And it's like, I don't think a lot of people understand when you have this guy who's just like dangerous to himself and potentially even other people acting out in this way, like how much you will put stuff on the line, even if your own comfort, your own drives, your own desires, to like comfort them out of fear sometimes, or uncomfortableness, or I don't know. I just feel like it's something that has been really like over speculated on. Max would allegedly act very strange when Xylie had a boyfriend throughout and after high school. Max, through his sister's name, allegedly arranged a meetup with Xylie in a hotel room and was inappropriate towards Xylie with, if I recall properly, some sort of unconsensual massage or something. Again, please watch FPS Diesel's video. That one has way more like timelines and stuff because, again, I don't even know where to find half of the content that discusses this. Xylie was dating someone else who was a content creator named Mutahar, and Max posted publicly a video to his Facebook seriously harming himself, and I believe he tagged Mutahar or the guy in it as well. Max contests most of the claims, while also claiming that Xylie and him were much closer than she let on. But again, if I reflect on my situation, I don't necessarily know if that's true either. Again, I definitely have a bias against him in this particular circumstance, just because upon watching all of his content and looking at the way that he interacts with other people and the way he interacts with criticism, the actions don't necessarily surprise me. There are some other exes that came out as well. Max responded with a video called Believe All Abuse, which is now deleted from his channel. I found it on an archive site. That archive site is linked in my sources. Other content creators are also skeptical in the claims of most of the other girls, or generally feel like there was not a lot presented. Tonality was strange, things of the sort. I watched a video about all of his exes, and I have to say there are clear signs on people fixating on his existence online, and I don't know what is true and what isn't, but I'll also say it's very weird that Max considers any pushback against him in any context always a cancellation, and his fixation on the concept of canceling someone is very, very strong, especially for someone whose content shouldn't really be relating to that at all in the first place, and I think kind of shows like the sort of ego downfall that we get further down as we continue this journey, if you will.
Hello everyone, welcome back to an exclusive Mamamax cancellation video. So today, my exes are, as always, accusing me of rape, animal abuse, domestic abuse, kidnapping, and whatever else they can attribute to me. Too long, didn't watch, none of it is true, and I'm going to prove that to you today.
The video that he did, the Believe All Abuse, was really cringe. And that's the other thing, it's like I almost feel disrespectful describing some of these videos as cringe, but it's just the stuff that he says is so stupid. And if you see me looking down or looking around, this topic, as I've said, makes me angsty and I don't like it, and I'm picking I put clear coat on my nails and I'm picking off my nails because I'm just not feeling good. Like, I watched the video about his exes, it pissed me off, it was really annoying. He would say that, again, people were just trying to do another cancellation video, and he kept trying to, he would dunk on people and be like, go off, sis, because he also used the stupid voice modulator, which is, so stupid to me.
Receipts show you were the one who would not respect my boundaries, but damn, go off, sis. Here she quotes what I'm to assume is some voice in her head, because no one I know has ever said such a thing to her. She then refers to my friends as a group of yes men that I surgically manufactured, probably because it will make it harder for them to defend me and talk about her horrible behavior without them looking like assholes. But damn, go off, sis. Here, she tries to make it look like her therapist and psychiatrist also think I'm a piece of shit, even though I never met either of them, because Paulina would go into a private room alone and ask me to not disturb her during her e-appointments, even though I was more than happy to drive her and go in with her to any of her other appointments. But damn, go off, sis.
Video also has the voice modulator, as I mentioned, and that sort of kind of horror editing, which again, extremely unnecessary. I think you should take something seriously and head on once, especially like, which he kind of does in his like sort of last apology video, but then he still has like the horror editing and the whatever weird stuff at the end, so he can never kind of stick to like just like being someone who can sit like this in front of a camera and address things directly one time. And I don't know the ins and outs of everything. And most of his defense, if he'll pull up, I swear to God, he'll pull up a picture of the girl and him, or he'll pull up a picture of whatever, and he'll be like, oh, it's weird to take a picture smiling with the person who just said to you.
19. This was the first night. It was just the two of us on our own. We stayed there actually the night before going to Six Flags itself, where that is where he sexually assaulted me. I don't have a police report to back that one up. I don't have any physical evidence either. It was, like I said, 2017. I'm not going to go into the details of how he sexually assaulted or anything.
That's okay, because I will. If I sexually assaulted you before we went to Six Flags, you look pretty fucking happy for a rape victim standing next to her rapist.
I don't understand how you're that obtuse to that concept, because that's the same thing of being like, well, why did you stay with him if he treated you badly? Give me a break. Give me a break. Because the other thing is, it pokes so many holes in this so-called like predator hunting stuff, because a lot of those dynamics are conducive to abusive relationship dynamics and manipulation dynamics that you appear to be expressing in your videos about so-called defending yourself, being like, go off, sis, being like, oh, this stupid bitch dares to talk about me, or like well, then why were you nice to me after? Clearly you liked it, lol. Like, it's like, shut the fuck up. So like Max said like that the feelings were not reciprocated. He confirmed that, except when she wanted attention and her boyfriend, things weren't going well with her boyfriend. Like, he doesn't understand the complexities around these types of things, as I mentioned before, which I described earlier in the video. But Max got calls from the police asking for him to stop talking to her after he tried to end his life on a publicly posted Facebook video. Max alleges that in that process, somehow Xylie doxed him on Kiwi Farms. And so Magnetar, I don't know if he was faceless. I don't know if nobody knew him at the time, because this is one of those things that kind of like, once you're doxed, it's hard to tell like when that point of no return was. But he doxed Anthony, Magnetar, the person that Xylie was dating, and showed Instagram DMs from an unnamed person making these claims, and he says that he knows them, so it's credible or something. This is after Xylie had shown DMs with Max that he just said is fake and that DMs are stupid. In the same video, he's showing DMs to so-called dox and bring forth allegations on this Anthony person. Said that other people cooperated, but provides no evidence of that, despite the fact that these girls cooperated within one another, but then that's a ploy to take him down. So that makes no sense as far as if you follow his own logic.
We met on July 7th of 2016 on one of my live streams where she was flirting with me in the live chat. We had mutual friends that said nice things about me to her, and she thought my chin was cute. This was before I face revealed. Shortly after, we started talking over Skype.
I think it's in July of 2016 where he says he wants to cream pie me, which, you know, is sexual activity as a minor.
I have no idea what non-anon means. Is this even me? I'll just say it is, because if I dare accuse them of faking just one screenshot, they're going to say everything I have on them is fake. Actually, you know what? They're probably going to do that anyway, so f*** it. The shit's fake as f***. Also, there's no date on this, so it doesn't prove anything. The one who published this video on it.
Now, is Magnetar what Max says? No clue. Kind of don't care, because in the sense of like within the context of this specific argument. Now, obviously, if Magnetar or Anthony, I don't even know if he still makes content anymore, is still doing these things or has ever done these things, like clearly there will need to be repercussions for that. But again, it just feels like a huge deflection and a bit of a confusing left turn from this whole thing. One of Max's criticisms of Anthony, interestingly enough, was pestering small commentary channels to comment on what was happening about Max, and condemns profiting off of sexual and CSA, and I don't have much to say in regard to who is right and who is wrong. There are people who cover Max way more closely than me. I just genuinely think it's rich to just genuinely have zero self-awareness in this video that's supposed to be like your big hit piece that will get yourself out of everything for the rest of your life. And it's just gobsmacked. I'm just gobsmacked, I guess. And from that, we're going to move into part 1.4, Spencer. So Spencer is someone who has more or less led the charge on the most recent allegations against the person named Camden Gerard Davis. Spencer is her chosen name. Previously, she went by another name when she entered this alleged cult. The alleged cult run by Camden went by several names, one, again, as I mentioned, being Gilded Divinity. Main criticism of this hunt is the lack of tangible evidence, and the main point of reference to this is when Max was asking for other people to cover this situation in detail, despite the fact that he had not provided really the public anything to go off of, and was just asking people to do it for him before he even really got down to anything. There's also a lot of criticism behind Spencer's statements and the 4 hour and 40 minute long podcast thing where she talks about it all. That's another point, because there are a bit of inconsistencies depending on where Spencer tells the story. She talked about it in the Discord call with Nicholas Deorio and Mutahar. She talks about it with an interview with Red Pagan, which has since been deleted. And she talks about it on this podcast thing. There are also other appearances regarding like talking about Camden in shorts and live streams and things of the sort, which a lot of people were not happy with because they were really confused as to why all of a sudden Max was moving into that kind of content when he had never really done that before. And his whole thing was those weird horror movie edits, again, which I question why people care for in the first place, but I digress. Spencer has also apparently known Max's family for a long time. Their moms are friends or something. So they knew each other personally, which could lean into why Max is so gung-ho about this whole thing and why he believes in Spencer without doubt. I'm not necessarily saying that you shouldn't either. And unfortunately, since this sort of downfall of Mamamax, people have been picking apart Spencer's podcast episode and general allegations. So let's get our bearings and figure out what at least I have figured out in regard to Spencer. Spencer came to Max 4 years ago with the story, and apparently sometimes they say 3 years, sometimes they say 4. A lot of holes, as I mentioned. But there were a few years where Max was like, I can't cover this right now because I've got other stuff going on. So the reason why I feel like there's holes in this whole thing is 1, there's only really verbal retelling. 2, so much content has been removed. 3, Spencer has scrubbed socials. And 4, her and Max only seem to reside on like Discord at this point, if at all, and the Patreon. So here's what I pieced together, again, with help from Xylie Gets Real in the DMs. So Spencer moved around a lot in her early life. Her mom was not a very responsible parent. She ended up later with her dad and stepmom.
15 months, my dad's family got custody of me, and I was raised by my great-grandparents. Great-grandmother passed when I was 9. I stayed with my great-grandfather for 2 more years, then moved in with my dad and my stepmom, and from there I was kind of just tossed from family member to family member. And so I grew up with this feeling of, oh, well, nobody really wants me. I'm just kind of, okay, there you go, take care of her. I'm like...
After finishing school that year, when she was 15, I gather her and I are the same age-ish, so it'd be about 2015, 2016. I believe it's 2016. After finishing the school year, she went to summer school and met a 16-year-old who claimed that her and Camden were engaged. She put Spencer in contact with Camden. This girl's name was Carrie. Spencer got into contact with Camden under the pseudonym Quinn, but with a C for some reason. She was 16 at this time and was talking to Camden while living in what everyone keeps calling DFW, which, again, I was always so confused because, again, people exist outside of America. What does DFW stand for? I think it's Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, which she says Texas, so that sounds right. But it also says DFW. When I look it up, it says it's an airport. But maybe that's the airport there. I don't know. Again, I don't know shit about Texas. So Camden, Quinn, whatever, claimed that he knew Spencer in the past life. And the whole cult kind of surrounds this supernatural thing with wolves, with werewolves and vampires and deities and the devil. And Camden told Spencer there were demons in the house that she lived in. with her dad and her stepmom, and that the only way to solve this was to go and run away to see him in Georgia. Now, prior to this, Spencer stayed with a couple of strangers on the way. There was one, she describes the buses that she had to take in the States and stuff, but she essentially just took like it sounds like it was like two really long buses, and then Camden picked her up in an Uber or something. So the first bus, when she ended up somewhere, I feel like it was like Arizona or something. Again, the specifics are not necessarily relevant. Anyway, she ended up getting essayed there, which was horrible. And then the second guy she stayed with before ending up in Georgia was apparently really nice, so that's good. But there was already some traumatic things that happened on the event just heading towards where Camden is. Upon arriving, Camden snuck Spencer in through his bedroom window, or like a screened-in window by the garage. Spencer says essentially the second that she was in Camden's house that he initiated sex, and then very quickly into their relationship was trying to force Spencer into sex work via Whisper and other social media, except this only really happened it only ended up kind of, for lack of a better term, coming to fruition once, but it wasn't even actual intercourse. It was just like a guy who wanted stuff with his nuts. Camden kept the money from this ordeal, and Spencer felt that this was kind of cheating because she thought she was like Camden's like girlfriend / wife, because like with the whole alleged like cult end of it, there's like mothers and wives and stuff, so it's like all the naming starts to get really confusing. She was refusing when she began to kind of refuse Camden in a lot of regards and was fighting him back and things like that, because he would also claim that he would also tell her like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to fight, and then would just start like beating her and stuff. And eventually, like, he said that she needed to leave the house because of Leviathans, but couldn't go back to Texas because she'd be abused. So he devised this plan to essentially force Spencer into foster care in Georgia, where the two went to a gazebo, and Camden called the police, pretending that he found a homeless girl in the park and was bringing her food. She stayed with the cult via kind of online interaction for a few months and was working to collect evidence against Camden after Camden essayed a friend of hers. Then Spencer tried to contact the police, and then they said that because it was a federal affair, they forwarded her to this nonprofit called Trafficking 911. Spencer also claimed that while with Camden, she miscarried 3 times with Camden and 1 from the guy in Arkansas, which that's the place where she got essayed on the bus. I just thought I wrote that higher, so I was like, oh, okay, I guess I didn't put it down. So that's the thing, right? A lot of people are... Well, so the thing is that Spencer didn't take tests until the last pregnancy. So there's 1 confirmed pregnancy, but then also just keeps, like, saying that she just knew. But there are a lot of other factors that can mess up things like menstrual cycles and things of the sort. And then people are kind of using that as a big point of trying to pick apart Spencer's story. I'm neither here nor there about it. I do think there are some kind of weird discrepancies. Like, essentially, she was saying she got pregnant after 2 weeks, like, a couple of times, which I feel like is just based on, like, cycle patterns is a bit confusing. But again, on one hand, I kind of see the kind of concept of, like, trying to pick it apart and being like, well, this doesn't make sense. But I also understand the sort of hesitance towards believing or not believing. Apparently, upon escaping this sort of cult, Spencer's family members were threatened by some of the members, and claims that this Guild of Divinity is still very active. There are apparently also recruitment texts that existed on Wattpad, and Spencer's goal with Max was not to like force victims to come out, but to build a community for those who survived with her. Camden has still not faced any legal repercussions, and through Max's poor juggling of everything, the only concrete confession that exists within this whole debacle is Spencer admitting to luring children from the internet. And what's interesting is there is clearly a lot of trauma that exists within that. And I want to kind of tap into our first like reading, where I have this thing called the Little Book of Trauma Healing. And when I was looking at this, there was a really interesting definition of trauma that's called perpetuation-induced trauma. Another source of trauma is rarely discussed, being an active participant in causing harm to others, whether by accident, in the line of duty, or outside the law as organized crime or gang activity. Research by psychologist Rachel McNair suggests that the traumatic effects of harming others intentionally or unintentionally can be as severe or even more severe than the suffering that victims and survivors experience. The issues McCare raises have significant implications for communities and nations. What are the psychological and spiritual implications for groups or nations that bear responsibility for genocide, torching villages, minority ethnic groups, mass incarceration, separating asylum seekers from children, gender discrimination, rape as a weapon, military occupation, suicide bombings, state support assassinations, or preemptive wars? Concept of moral injury, the damage done when someone violates his or her own values, has been mostly applied to individuals, but is still relevant in the concept of the collective. So I just thought that would be really, it's like an interesting thing to think about, where it's like there is actually research and a lot of content about how being forced into perpetuating values against your own and being forced to assist someone in a sort of criminal activity can be very jarring on the individual. And that is something that I feel like is prevalent when we're talking about Spencer in particular. Now that we have an idea kind of what's going on, let's go to part 2. So part 2, where it all went wrong. So now towards the end of the first part, I discussed the sort of concept of the lack of evidence brought forward to the public and Max's messiness and things of the sort. And this is where we're going here, because not only has there been a lack of evidence, but there's been a gross mishandling as to what is there. Max has been acting very foolish throughout this process, and once his credibility got questioned in any capacity, he very rapidly began to spiral. But upon watching Max's content for myself, Max's critics have clearly resulted in Max steering off track in a ton of videos. How directly this affected Max in particular depended on circumstance. For example, his video, "This is what happened to a child predator on TikTok," opens with a sort of dramatization of like Mommy M, which Max created because of someone who was very critical of him named Tommy C, who made a joke about siding with pedophiles because he does not believe that Max is actually actively catching anyone bad. So what this means is because Mamamax has this kind of thought process, and I will talk about this time and time and time again as we get further in the video, that essentially if you're not like smelling the farts out of his ass, you are in turn siding with predators. Because for some reason, you're not allowed to dislike in any capacity how Max approached it, only because the intention is good, apparently.
This video is meant to document, educate, and entertain, but do not let that diminish the severity of these crimes. It is a reality many children have to face every day. If my style of content does not suit you, feel free to leave a dislike and watch another video, but my core audience finds catharsis and comfort in these expressions. For anyone affected by the contents in this video, please refer to the support links in the description. If you'd like to skip ahead to the investigation, you'll find the chapters below. Thank you all for tuning in.
Hello, this is Maxine at Pagan. Please return to headquarters for further instructions. Thank you and have a nice day.
So today there's this cringe lord named Mamamax. He's an arrogant prick on YouTube and Twitter, trying to start the next apocalypse, I guess. No, sir. Oh, no, you don't. Not on my watch. I'm gonna destroy you now. Because this is my livelihood. You posed a threat. You dare pose a threat to my monetization? No. No. I'm out here changing lives. Reacting to Twitter drama all day. So what I'm gonna do now? I'm gonna Let's watch this. Actually, you know what? Before we even watch it, let's take a caller. Hi, you're live on the air.
I pick pedophiles.
Wow. Wow, okay. I absolutely agree. Thank you so much for calling in. So without further ado, let's get right into the video.
So then now you have this sort of paradox where it's like he's put himself in a box that he can't accept any criticism now, or is hypocritical to a certain degree. So Tommy C was like, well, if not liking you, to boil it down, the joke was, if I don't like you, Max, then, and that means that I have to follow your illogical premises, that I then in turn like predators, then fine. It was kind of him being like, well, then fine, I'll play into your stupid game. And it's so strange where you have this video where you've supposedly finally found somebody and you open it with addressing your detractors. So then what you've done now is you've put at the forefront of the video a petty beef you have with somebody or an argument you have with someone ahead of the cause that you are so supposedly dedicated to. But then why would the most important part, because again, I think something that people need to understand, because if you think of it, let's say like an essay, you have an introduction, you have your body paragraphs. Let's say like for me, I have my intro, right? But Max's videos aren't structured like mine are. They're not structured where it's like the introduction clearly serves to kind of outline what's coming in and all that kind of stuff. And I think something else to note, which is why I do for these big dramatic videos, I do those sorts of opening sequence. You're supposed to try to catch people in the first 30 seconds of wanting to watch a video. And in doing that, Max makes it almost seem like it's a drama video. And I would even argue to a certain degree, having a Tommy C reference at the beginning almost is like implying that Tommy C is one of these people that you're supposed to protect against. And I'm not saying that's what Max intended to do. I'm not saying that's what actually happened, but I just think it's so strange to have the Mommy C bit in the beginning. But now we're going to move in to kind of where everything was like really going down. So part 2.1, we're going to talk about demand YouTube as a platform and influencer involvement. Now I understand the timeline for this is absolutely all over the place. When I say this is a lore hole and seems to never end, I am so serious. And you could probably tell by the length of this video. 2020 marked the year that Max transitioned into making almost exclusively hunting content on YouTube. Now, I had to get all of these things from this sort of internet archive place as opposed to YouTube, because when people really started coming down on Max and like the big like exposed videos came out, he like nuked like half of his channel. So I don't know who Max was at all until December of last year. And I never had any tabs as to what he was doing prior to him deleting all of the content. So if there's inaccuracies with any dates or ordering or anything like that, it's just because like the existence of the content as it was presented to those who did watch him is no longer there. With this transition into this new foreign content, YouTube had presented new barriers for making very controversial content. In September of 2020, Max published a YouTube video called Answer Us YouTube in response to the fact that his videos were getting striked or they were getting demonetized, etc. And this was demanding that YouTube have a direct stance against CSA on YouTube, all because this video that he made was taken down. I think something that's a bit strange is if we talk about things like YouTube having a stance against CSA, you're not allowed. Like, there are so many guidelines around content with children. And I'll put on screen now a screenshot where it's like, even if you're uploading a video, you have, which this was a bit after, I think, I don't know when this setting came in, but because I only started making content a couple years ago, but you have to literally say if children are going to be in it or not. And that's going to change the way that the comment section works, going to change the way the moderation works, going to change the way a lot of other things work. YouTube has a lot of policies on where children are involved in content. So it's not as if they've never shown any desire for like safety of children in the content produced and the interactions that come as they go in. So it was very chauvinistic. It was very much like, I feel like just driven from like him being butthurt about his videos first and foremost. But this video called Answer Us YouTube demands that YouTube have this direct stance. And that particular video that was involved with this was Max looking into this sort of Tinder alternative, but it was like supposed to be for teens. And it was just talking about how like essentially people had, like adults had infiltrated it. And Max states that the content is too meaningful to be taken down. And with a cause like predator hunting, Max believes essentially, because again, he's including doxes in this video, that he's just above TOS. Somebody could potentially come on YouTube and make up evidence and make up a person or make up XYZ and do all this stuff and then just to dox somebody they don't like. That's obviously a huge hypothetical. That's not saying that's not me saying that's what happened here. But what I'm saying is you're not above YouTube not giving you the benefit of the doubt. I don't know why Max thinks his shit doesn't stink and he can just do whatever he wants, sit there and throw a fit and just be like, no, it's your fault, entire platform, for not liking me not being the most popular person, me not being the whatever. And it's just such a strange kind of toy of emotion that he does with a lot of people because of this strong, emotionally driven cause that he's linking to these videos. While we're here, we need to ground ourselves a little closer to the real world. Max is not a professional in any capacity. Most of the people in this whole circus are not even remotely qualified to be talking about this and leaning in as deep as they are. And the ability to claim to be an expert because you were classically trained or educated has diminished greatly, especially when you are doing something outside of like STEM. Many people express their grief with the current systems that exist, which I understand, and the current training that exists. But with topics like CSA, it is valid because there are many flaming hoops to jump through at all times. And the issue with the access to information in surplus is that so many people think that they are able to acquire all of the information on something, which is why Max leans into ChatGPT being able to help him with things. It's why he believes that he can just look everything up and figure it out like that. They usually do not end up knowing where to find every single thing, because there are so many things that you think you know about something, even if you've been intimately involved, that it turns out you don't know. I even remember when I was going to start my master's for teaching, I was like, oh, well, they're just going to teach me some stuff like how to do report cards and how to do whatever. But there were niche things intertwined into the curriculum that I had never even heard of existing. And I would have never once thought to look up if I was just trying to research this myself. And I know that's an unrelated example to a certain degree. But what I'm saying is there are deep underlying things like evidence management, like client management, how to work within the confines of the government, how to work cross state lines, how to work internationally if need be, because Spencer talks about this girl from Australia. So if this is an international case and this is going to involve international law, this is going to be a whole different debacle. And where would you be looking that up? So what you end up with is people unaware of ethics, practices, and procedures and handling some of the most precious evidence for the case poorly. And I think people are not even thinking about legal repercussions that come with withholding evidence or holding the evidence that they have because of the content of it being related potentially to CSA cases. Now, I have a book in this giant stack next to me that you can't see, but called The Death of Expertise. Oh my God. Which I've read a few times before, but it kind of outlines my thoughts on this whole ordeal pretty well. So in fact, who is anyone to argue with anyone? In the information age, there is no such thing as an irresolvable argument. Each of us is now walking around with more accumulated information on smartphones or tablets than ever existed in the Library of Alexandria. In the beginning of this book, I mentioned the character Cliff Clavin from the classic television show Cheers, the local know-it-all who routinely lectured the other regulars in the Boston pub on every subject under the sun. But Cliff couldn't exist today. As the first claim of it's a known fact, everyone in the bar could pull out their phone and verify and more likely disapprove Cliff's claims. Despite what irritated professionals may think, however, the internet is not the primary cause of challenges to their expertise. Rather, the internet has accelerated the collapse of communication between experts and lay people by offering apparent shortcuts to erudition. It allows people to mimic intellectual accomplishment by indulging in an illusion of expertise provided by a limitless supply of facts. Facts, as experts know, are not the knowledge or the ability, and on the internet, facts are sometimes not even facts. In the various skirmishes and campaigns against established knowledge, the internet is like artillery support, a constant bombardment of random, disconnected information that rains down on experts and ordinary citizens alike, deafening all of us while blowing up attempts at reasonable discussion. Internet users have created many humorous laws and corollaries to describe discussions in the electronic world. The tendency to bring up Nazi Germany in an argument inspired by Godwin's law and relative to reductio ad Hitlerum is deeply entrenched in usually immutable views of the internet users are the foundations of Palmer's law, in which the internet can only change a person's mind from having no opinion to having the wrong opinion, and why many others, including my personal favorite, Skid's law. Any internet message correcting an error in another post will contain at least one error itself. So that's just saying about the, inaccurate nature on kind of what's going on and what is happening with the realm around Max and the content that he's making. There were hashtags trending on Twitter, and Max got communication from YouTube and even got a partner manager. It is very much worth noting that prior to the video coming out, Max was actively releasing exposing videos on these predators. This was a sort of favor for his audience to do for him. Now, put a pin in that too. Then again, according to the archive site that I was looking at June 2nd, 2023, Max published the video, How This Little Girl Makes $150 Billion Every Year, which opens parodying a Mr. Beast video. This video was designed to kind of outline the risks of AI, how it had a potential to increase trafficking. To me, this bizarre satirical formatting of someone completely unrelated to this definitely plants a seed into the arc that led to his ultimate downfall.
In this video, we're gonna show how this little girl makes $150 billion for an industry that
traffics 1 million children every year.
He also, weirdly enough, lists ChatGPT as an influence, which is interesting because, like, why does ChatGPT got a whole character arc in this whole thing? What really threw people off was this video called Brainwash Your Favorite Influencers Trigger Warning that came along with both a channel rebrand and a letter to Spencer in the description. I'm gonna read the letter. Dear Spencer, initially I was hesitant when you approached me to document your story. By nature, I'm an autistic experimental filmmaker with a propensity for igniting movements that many deem controversial. I'm not a journalist by any stretch, but you believed in my ability to do justice to your narrative. Your faith in me has fueled my commitment, and I've invested every fiber of my being into this project. As you know, this project started as a simple podcast episode. However, as I delved deeper into the editing process and spent more time listening to the story being told, the intricacies of your experience have deeply resonated with me. As I listened more, I found my own traumatic past reflecting yours in some of the most heart-wrenching ways. The betrayals we face, the violence inflicted upon us, the profound isolation from friends and family, the financial exploitation, the sharing of our most private images, the intricate web manipulation, the malicious spread of rumors, and everything. However, unlike my own abusers, there will be no mercy extended to yours. I intend to lay bare the reprehensible nature of his actions for a world that is too starved for justice. With our combined experiences, I've poured my utmost effort into translating our anguish, frustration, sorrow, rage, and trauma into a cinematic experience. As we discussed, my research involved interviews with cult experts, reading extensively on cult methodologies, and consulting with anti-cult organizations. Through this process, I've come to realize that many of the tactics cults employ are also leveraged by influencers, myself included. I'm not proud of this, so my intent is to be transparent about my utilization of these strategies for the betterment of children, and ultimately revealing their efficacy as a means to educate the public about cult-like leadership. In a world where influencers wield disproportionate power over susceptible minds, it's alarming to consider that many are motivated solely by status, wealth, and sex. Every day brings a new revelation of popular personalities, individuals who have amassed considerable power, being implicated in egregious acts against children. While the landscape is rife with misinformation, I believe the video will serve as a rough litmus test for the characters of our influencers. The aim is to expose the very essence of who they truly are based on the behavior rather than their words. Lastly, given the algorithm-unfriendly nature of my content, leveraging the influence of my peers will be essential for broadening our reach. It is for these reasons why I made the trailer the way I did. Upon my initial viewing, you'll quickly recognize that I've crafted a diabolical amalgamation of hypnosis, personality test, cult recruitment, reaction bait, and a call to action video. We're entering a translational period characterized by the rapid progression of artificial intelligence. Much of the contents and ideas in this film have been fueled by its power. This film trailer will stand as an unequivocal evidence of the potent impact that arises when cult-like strategies intersect with advanced AI technologies. The result can be profoundly beneficial and alarmingly harmful. I've harnessed this formidable power just to amplify your voices, but to advocate for the well-being and betterment of children everywhere. I owe you nothing less than my absolute best. The video encapsulates both my benevolent, darkest instincts, all my services to plunging world to your story. Rest assured that I'm committed to ensuring this crucial dialogue remains untainted by personal agendas. I stand behind the integrity of this trailer's content. Should anyone dare to propagate lies or launch damaging PR attacks, I am poised to ruthlessly dethrone from their self-serving pedestals. I will unmask the deception and subject to the forgiving scrutiny of public's opinion, letting society at large consign them to the deserved place in history. The time of sacrificing children's well-being at the altar of personal gain is over. Additionally, I have no intent of profiting from this video. To that end, you'll find a few surprises that we can discuss after you watch it. I hope I did not let you down, your friend Max. With the rebrand, he rebranded the channel to the name God Cult. Max has shifted his aim from not just to YouTube as a platform, but to those who make content for the platform and the content that Max deems to be less important than his own. But this backfired in more ways than one. For one, people thought that Max was hacked and were simply unsubscribing. This video, beyond lacking tact, also just had random pieces in it that generally made no sense. Even if these things made sense to Max's audience, this video by design was not made for Max's audience. The goal for this video was to reach beyond those people. Max is clearly so in his head about everything that he self-sabotages even his small side projects like this one. By the way, the same video introduces the investigation of Cam Gerard Davis, which I've mentioned being the main focus in Max's videos for the last few years. I also want to add that I have an extension on Chrome that allows me to play videos much slower and much faster than regular controls. I had to constantly slow down the video to 0.2x speed to read the text on screen. These texts contained pretty crucial information on the stuff that Camden was allegedly doing. Max also put on screen that he wants to interview Camden to understand his childhood. Then Max, I'm also going to put on screen more of those like little clip shots just to show kind of like how weird some of the statements were and the fact that I had to put it so incredibly slow that I have no idea how any normal viewer would have ever seen any of these things. So then Max asks his audience to reach out for the following creators to help: PewDiePie, Lex Friedman, Mr. Beast, Joe Rogan, Philip DeFranco, Ethan and Ela Klein of H3, Anthony Fantano.
Hey buddy, did you hear the news? It's Predator Review.
Corpse husband, who apparently owes him a favor. The video ends with just sort of kind of outlining what the future plans are going to be and has a voicemail from Spencer saying that she is happy that Max is trying to get the attention of influencers for this in this space. The next video was addressing the previous one, this video titled "This is what happened to Mamamax." Then he artistically talks about his films and states something that when we get back to the Nicholas Deorio Mutahar section, they say they've never heard, but I found it in this video. Max talks and says that while the narratives are crafted in fiction, the predator and pursuit are very much a reality.
So, the Mamamax universe was a cautionary tale that takes place in a dystopian future where child predators have seized global power, exploiting the digital landscape to entrench their rule. Rising from the ashes of a society that failed to protect its most vulnerable, the children emerged. A covert network of vigilantes inspired by the style of Hotline Miami. Once victims, they are now hunters of the monsters who hurt children. They form a structured rebellion, seeking to dismantle the predatory hierarchy and awaken the world to the lurking digital dangers. Each video served as a guide, teaching viewers to recognize, evade, and expose the insidious tactics of predators. This series was my stand against the proliferation and normalization of on the internet, and the severe lack of justice in our law enforcement systems. While the narratives were crafted in fiction, the predator and the pursuit was very much a reality. As my work drew more controversial attention from YouTube, my viewership suffered a steep decline. It seems that the line between the fictional portrayal and the underlying truth became blurred for some, leading to confusion and concern. Perhaps in the future the time will be right to revisit these stories, but for now, it's apparent that society may not be prepared for such provocative content.
Here, Max directly takes kind of the sort of criticisms of poor formatting on his part and twists it into like society's not ready for me, which again, I feel like the ego to be constantly on that sort of train is a bit strange to me. Max generally takes any dislike of any aspect of his content and somehow links it to people not caring about CSA. Anyone who doesn't like specifically him are aligning with predators. And this is so deep into someone existing online that I just feel like Max is just out of touch with the concepts of reality. And his ego is going on a rampage because his excuse is that the cause is cathartic to a certain degree. The video ends with comparing influencers to audience relationships and cult tactics. Here's the thing. My opinion is on this, and this is something that I've held true for like a little while, I've gotten really annoyed about people throwing around the word cult all the time because I really feel like since like the Reddit atheism era, everyone has really just demeaned the term cult. Like people would call like Mormonism a cult and Jehovah's Witness a cult, which like there might be some grounds to. Then it goes into like all of Christianity is a cult, which like I guess debatable, whatever. And then it's like the concept of like asking a favor of someone when you have power as the content creator, or, you know, having any sort of like fan base dynamic as all of a sudden a cult is like, that's a huge stretch. After this, Max continued to make videos kind of trying to poke at the influencers, and he even made a sort of like fake cancellation video, which again, this is just diving into that obsession with the concept of cancellation about Xylie, aka Penguin Zero or Moist Critical, and got so much backlash from that Max changed the thumbnail to Sniper Wolf as a Sniper Wolf because he discusses that in the video as well.
My name is Max Stryker. I'm a filmmaker dedicated to empowering children. This is a call to action disguised as a cancellation. It is my hope that it will bring the maximum amount of eyes and ears to crucial issues in our society.
This is the point where people became overprovoked, and that brings us to the next section. Part 2.2, Nicholas Deorio, Mutahar, Chud Logic, and Xylie Gets Real. This is where the video's gonna start to get like a little bit kind of like that meme of like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where he's got all the strings connecting the photos and stuff. So one of the most important parts of this whole story is the other people who became involved. There are 4 main players as far as like the angle that I'm taking. There is also lyrics. I don't know. I'll put it on screen. This whole time, I thought I was stupid because I couldn't figure out why I was seeing lyrics, but then some people were saying lyrics. It's because this guy owns both of those channels, and I, in my viewing, had been essentially jumping around between the second channel and the main channel, and that's why I couldn't figure out who was who, because it was the same person. Anyway, as you see on screen, that's how that works. So I used the second channel name essentially the whole time. I'm talking about lyrics. I'm sorry. I don't know who any of these people are, and there's like 15 different people in this whole debacle. So take that as you may. Merci. And those involved with Max's allegations as they were coming out, that whole ordeal with those people would be a whole separate video. And there becomes a point where we're getting to a point where it's like not necessarily super reasonable for me to be able to detail every single possible intricacy. This video is like for the people who don't really know what was going on at all. The main actors here are Mutahar, aka Some Ordinary Gamers, Nicholas Deorio. Those are the 2 biggest figures here as far as involvement and following. Then we have 2 more kind of side characters, Xylie Gets Real and Chud Logic. Before we fully get into this, again, I want to thank Xylie Gets Real for how helpful she's been and the process and the timelines and everything. Just know that this video would not exist without Xylie. Now I'm going to continue. Starting with Mutahar, there is apparently a pretty far back timeline between him and Max. Max has expressed in videos before that he has a very small circle of people on YouTube and that kind of stuff. And so for Max to be someone that he's actually hung out with like in real life and stuff is a bit of a big deal. I think he talks about this in his Mamamax video, so hopefully I'll be able to clip it.
Today's video is the most serious I might have made in my entire career on this platform. It's a video I don't want to make because it's personally so uncomfortable. It's a video about someone I and many in the community considered a friend. Today, I personally don't consider this person a friend. I consider them a liar, both professionally and on a personal level regarding very personal things. But that's me going into things that I shouldn't need to.
Mutahar is like one of the biggest influencers that Max had direct contact with. He does talk to Xylie at some points, but that's a bit muddier. Mutahar expressed interest in Max along with the wider kind of commentary bro universe, to which they typically just call themselves the commentary community, despite the fact that like that spans much, much farther than them. Regardless, Mutahar and Nicholas Deorio end up having him on like podcasts and videos and stuff. Mutahar talks about the video like about YouTube that Max made, and Nicholas Deorio has him on his podcast that he had ran at one point. A lot of these like commentary, like that commentary community, like the commentary bro community or whatever, just like cycles through a lot of podcasts. There's a bunch of different ones. There was one with like Keemstar. There was one with Zaptai, which Max was on that one too. There's a bunch of different ones that have kind of come up and fallen, and you know, there was like Mom's Basement. There was a whole bunch of different ones. Max wasn't like a huge part of these people's channels by any means, but it was just kind of sort of adjacent to these people. Mutahar comes to a point where he begins to try to give Max tips on the backlash from this whole God cult kind of thing. Mutahar begins to notice that Max is making sort of empty promises as far as content and giving evidence to people. Instead of kind of like locking into the case that he's supposed to be doing, he's aiming instead to produce content that is just kind of designed to like guilt support out of his contemporaries and sway any criticism of him into the context that instead they will be supporting predators. Now, I'm slightly confused with the timeline because of the sheer volume of content and because things were released out of order, but Mutahar began looking deeper into the evidence, given that he didn't want to make a video about something this serious in the first place. Now, don't mind the timeline because I don't necessarily know what action motivated which, and I'll present more or less in the order that I came across everything, and the videos in my sources might have it somewhere. It's just, it will also make more sense once I explain Nicholas Deorio, but I couldn't necessarily just do it like in a flat order. Mutahar looks into this sort of gilded divinity and states that he found out more about it in 30 minutes Googling. He even came across a YouTube channel that he said should be audited than anything that Mamamax was able to give him or produce. As well, one of the biggest bombshells of this whole process, and this is where it gets really, really crazy, and trigger warnings for this section also, is the evidence specific to that mega file that I mentioned earlier. So as I mentioned, mega files are like a Google Drive, Dropbox type storage device, but they're publicly accessible via like a link. And Max puts evidence in these files and makes them viewable for the public, despite the fact that they do contain usually very, very explicit materials. Mutahar alleges that some files in those mega folders or whatever activated what's called a hash, which means it raises a flag for CP to the FBI. Hashes can only be compared to previously marked materials. Mutahar directly asks Max about this, and Max brushes it off in the now leaked Discord call. And now with that, I'll add the context of Nick. But first, I will play the clip about specifically the mega folder. This is like a very, very long clip because I'm going to let the whole thing play through for the context as to kind of grant what is needed to be granted. I also want to say that later in the video, I'm consistently quite critical about how I feel like Nick and Mutahar throughout this call as well are kind of playing like pseudo police. But I think this was also because I had gone so deep into this rabbit hole that the first Nicholas Deorio and Mutahar videos had been the first thing I watched. I watched like 30 hours of content after that and kind of forgot about the tonality of those two videos, which do clearly outline that they are saying that this is just too serious for YouTube and nobody should be doing this, which is the same sentiment that I have. So understand that if I'm overly critical, it's just because I genuinely forgot about that tonality that was in those videos. And I will admit when I am wrong in kind of saying certain things in a certain way.
But I think all this is really besides the point, honestly. I think the last thing I have to talk to you about, honestly, and this was the biggest point for me, and you knew this was coming, was that mega folder. Because your explanation doesn't hold weight to it, Max, and it's a really, really serious allegation that I've been receiving countless DMs about over the last several days. From not just random viewers, but from actual larger creators as well, too, in regards to that folder. The position this puts me in is really, really like, because I have been, not co-signing, but I've been friendly on your terms, and people contact me, Nexpo, Nick Crowley, a lot of these people in regards to you. So I want to ask what the story for the mega folder is.
Okay. Like I explained, the mega folder and why it was publicly available was evidence of predators. This includes them masturbating on camera while I am telling them I'm a 15-year-old girl.
Okay.
This was made available so that people could see that these videos, even if there are fictional elements, this part is real, and this needs to be taken to law enforcement. If it was sent to law enforcement by Mega, then it is serving the purpose it was intended for.
But see, the problem with that statement is the error message you got was because one of your files triggered a known CSEM hash. And it's very, very rare for you to do that. You'd actually have to put real child pornography, not an image of a predator map, because it doesn't file the CSEM fingerprinting. It wouldn't be you pretending to be underage, because that still wouldn't trigger a CSEM fingerprint. Well, what triggers a CSEM fingerprint is like Daisy's destruction, or a known piece of child porn already in the FBI and NCMEC servers.
I don't know what to tell you. I've never distributed child porn, and I don't get anywhere near it.
And the error
all I
message
can
you
tell you,
received on Mega, yeah.
all I can tell you is that we uploaded the footage of predator while there's text messages saying I'm a 14-year-old girl, and they saw that. If they want to constitute that as child sexual material, then I wouldn't disagree if I was actually a 14-year-old girl. But
no, but you're not getting the video that you would have to be hashed by the FBI or any of these agencies as actual child, and it would have to be put into a server. So that would be confirmed material. They would never trigger a hash on something that was just, I could pretend, I'm like a 12-year-old girl or something, and like upload a video of myself or some shit, and that would never trigger any hash. The hash is only triggered because it's directly compared to an actual piece of illegal video or photo uploaded.
If I could interject for just 1 second, how do you know what was... did they notify you what videos triggered this or took your account down?
Yeah, the hash in particular, maybe.
So, like I said, I don't have access to the account that was used to make that mega. I sent all of my evidence to a member of my team. It was a non-hacker, and they uploaded it and sent me the link.
So for all we know, that person could have posted something that triggered a...
I doubt it. They abandon all their accounts after they upload shit. But and I checked the Mega Drive link. It only had just the evidence. That's all I can tell you.
That Mega account wasn't yours then.
Correct.
I mean, if a CSAM hash was triggered, whoever you worked with absolutely uploaded.
I don't know what to tell you. I don't believe they would do that, but
it's not whether you believe or not. It's what tripped the CSAM hash. I mean, but at the end of the day, like.
You're saying there's no way it could have been tripped by just me saying I'm a 14-year-old girl and Mega looks at that?
No, because Mega doesn't actually look at the video file. Those videos are encrypted. They check a pre-computed hash on upload time.
Okay. Well, I can tell you if I was publicly distributing child pornography, the FBI would have arrested me already. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
Nicholas Deorio interviewed Max on one of his podcasts and has been talking to Max as well. Nick, upon Max kind of going off the rails, started kind of crafting a video about the downfall. Nicholas Deorio, again, a controversial figure, unfortunately, despite the fact that he's got that personality of his, could reverse image search a Twitter screenshot and trace it down to someone's second cousin's Google Plus account. Like, the way that this guy, finds stuff is something beyond, my realm of comprehension, period. I genuinely don't understand how this happens. Nick breaks evidence together, and him and Mutahar released, these long-form deep dive expose videos, each on, I believe it was the same day, running at about an hour and a half each. Prior to this, they confronted Max over a Discord call because of the lack of evidence, and this was the call that I had mentioned before with the mega folder in it. Nicholas Deorio and his cohorts cover this in a way that I feel like was somewhat bizarre and inappropriate because of the ethos of Max, and as well as kind of the messaging behind the content. This man has, Nicholas Deorio has a show called Rape Review, and it's just for Christ's sake. Girl. And it's just random silly interjections, and he was doing research streams for this while playing Peter Griffin in Fortnite. It's just a little bit strange, and him and Mutahar on the call too also insert really weird personal anecdotes that were not really relevant, Mutahar being I would have not fallen for a cult at 16, which when I was streaming I was well, what about deep Southern Baptist fundamentalism? Those people are much older than 16 and are not necessarily, and there are someone said well, they were, in my comments they said well, those people come into it from their whole life, and I'm well, there are many people who are born again. Look at Kanye West and come back to me on that. You know what I'm saying? This is not something that necessarily is out of the scope of reality at all, and at least not nearly as much as they say it is. At one point, they say sneaking into, Nicholas Deorio says, well, I graduated around the same time as you, because Spencer says that at one point, Camden was sneaking into the high school and having lunch with some of the girls after he had graduated, and they said that wasn't really possible. I don't know about America, but I recently worked in a high school that literally had a lockdown for that exact thing happening, last year. It's not something that's uncommon necessarily. It's not that really that, difficult in some circumstances to do. They compare how he covers cases to how they cover cases as if they're all cops or something. They're not. They're not FBI agents. I just feel it's really weird kind of tonality around that. I don't know. There's just something that feels off, and I'm not trying to shoot shots at people before anyone starts to freak out. It's just, I thought it was kind of bizarre. And listen close. It sounds like I'm constantly hedging myself. But the reality is, I want to be transparent about where my information comes from and how I feel about its delivery, and how I feel about who delivers it, and how I've kind of brought together everything. Nick and Mutahar collected and showed things overall in a way that was pretty good, especially if you can get past some of the sillier stuff. And they did ask really important questions. And when you're dealing with someone as self-involved and as chronically online as Max is, you kind of need the same sort of person to get these things out of you. And I'm not saying like to the degree of personality and all that stuff that they're all exactly the same, but I'm saying like the same sort of like figures online. And at the end of the day, I just hope that things work out for Spencer and this girl that Mutahar says that he's working with. In this call, there was a lot of doubt that I think is a bit silly because they just constantly doubt the incompetence of like state mental health services and different departments. And I think it's really giving, it's a lot of bootlicking. And it's as if like there aren't like essentially, you can't even begin to count the examples of people's cases slipping through the cracks. Like this whole channel dedicated just to cold cases that slip through the cracks. Mental health services foundationally like do not work well. There have been like, I have personal experiences with like state mental health. I know it's in Canada, so it's a bit different, but like Mutahar's in Toronto, so it's kind of the same shit. And it's like, I'm on the other end where I'm like, what Spencer's explaining sounds pretty normal. The state will slip up in a lot of these ways, like very often.
Okay. So, all right. So again, the whole thing is, so he's got this cult. These people are not doing criminal actions on his behalf. He's armed and dangerous. Have you reported this to the FBI, the ATF of the area, like
yes,
or any branch? And what did they say about it?
When we try contacting Baldwin County right now, they're saying that, oh well, we can't really do anything about this right now. And right now,
So you've explained to law enforcement clearly he's armed and dangerous, and he refused to do nothing.
That's so far. We're going to contact them again, and try and urge them again. There's only so much that we can do, being states away.
Of course. It's just that if you again, I always bring the federal jurisdiction into it too. It's like if he is, because again, listen, I mean, cops come out on slaughtering reports all the fucking time, that's because people can be armed and dangerous. So I assume that because this person is armed and dangerous and he's running what appears to be a fucking criminal outfit, it should be a lot easier to get law enforcement involved. And that's where my shock really comes out of, that's where trying to wrap my head around this is a bit foreign, but okay. So he's dangerous. Law enforcement doesn't want to do anything about it. Is there any reason why this evidence that you guys have under an NDA is a huge concern of mine too? Obviously, I think asking any YouTuber or any personality to make a PSA, right, let's say on this situation, without letting them have access to the evidence that they can use to discuss this individual in their PSA, that's where the issue is. And that's why the campaign to really hit the influencers has fallen flat, because obviously, I'm sure people like Nick, you can't cover something unless you can see the evidence instead of, just a witness testimony. Same for, people like me or, Turkey Tom or, Moist Critical or really any person on the internet. That's an issue. And you guys do understand that, right?
Yes, so I would like to explain my position on this.
Sure.
So the purpose of the NDA is to protect the survivors. That is why the NDA protects their anonymity, and for them to be able to give the approval of what they want to share. But we do want to let people in and see what is occurring here. It's just my priority has been to protect the survivors.
But you do understand, say Charlie looks at everything, hypothetical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Charlie can't then go, guys, there's a predator on the loose. I saw it on Discord. That wouldn't be sufficient for his audience. It's one thing to get somebody on board and to get moral support behind the scenes and join a group chat. It's another thing to get actual support, the stuff that you're looking for, and you won't get that until you show more publicly.
Right, and I guess the challenge for me with showing the evidence is I personally have not been walked through the evidence besides Spencer's. The survivors in the server, not all of them are as active as we would like them to be. Obviously, a lot of them have trauma. They talk about it, and that it's hard for them to actually just sit down and speak with me. But that's why I've been just asking the general public to please be patient. There's a lot of things we need to wait for. I am just trying to get the word out that this is Camden Gerard Davis. This is what the accusations against him are. And it's also, you can also we are fine saying this is all alleged. Like, we are fine if...
Well, you can't just say it's alleged now.
No,
You're
because
calling him a pedophile.
yeah, 100%. That's not.
Yeah.
I'm fine doing it because I trust them. But
Okay,
all I want to do...
But you said you didn't review most of the evidence besides Spencer, though.
I reviewed the evidence. I just haven't had the context as to what it is pertaining to.
So you looked at the evidence, but you don't understand.
Yeah, in the exact timeline, which has been just one of many reasons why it's been such a struggle to create the comprehensive timeline, as I'm waiting on a lot of different things.
But you see, that's why people are inflamed with you right now. It's because you just told me in this call that you didn't properly review every single victim, and now you're comfortable calling a man a pedophile, right? Like, you know, whatever happened, I'm not sure. I don't know, but whatever happened, you're calling him a pedophile. Now you're saying in this call that we're fine using the term allegedly. You've been calling this person a pedophile, and you've been having this expectation that we just jump on board when, you know, you are the chief investigator in this. It's not me, it's not Nick, it's no one else. You are the chief storyteller, the investigator, the person who has, we believe that you were the only person up till now who has reviewed every single bit of evidence and put the context into your head. And if you've only read Spencer's, which is fine, that's one testimony, we've been told that he has trafficked hundreds of people. Is there evidence now that there are hundreds of people, or you only appear to have 5 or 6?
And to me, it lends to the idea that some people have about their content, some like Max fans, that the goal was to come from Max personally. And I don't believe this is what the reasoning was, but I can understand the reasoning based on those sort of weird kind of side tangents that they were going on. Now I'm going to mess up the timeline a little bit, and I'm sorry again, because when Max was still trying to face the criticism head on, he went on a live stream. And this is where Xylie Gets Real comes in. So Xylie is one of those channels that's been covering this whole thing very close, streaming as new things come out. I have some clips that were recorded by her friend Cormasta. I hope I said that right. And Xylie's kind of found a way to be involved in a lot of these things. She was involved in 2 other big dramas I've talked about before, which is like the Deaf Noodles ordeal in August of 22 and last summer with Cody Grant. And what Xylie tends to do in these conversations is kind of directly come into like who is kind of melting down the most and then intervening directly with them at the time. And I've somewhat noticed a pattern between the situations that Xylie comes in with, because she'll directly criticize the influencers without insults, but she'll be like very loud and like a little bit like intimidating. No backhandedness though either. It's just some people are very, very bad at facing conflict face to face, and these people that tend to be spiraling when people criticize them and then keep pumping out content about how much they hate the people that criticize them, then you have like the most criticizing person come in, and it always creates like these crazy clips. So Xylie dug into Max for like 15 straight minutes almost. And I'm going to do a quick, like, condensed edit of, like, the highlights. And I think this is really what kind of put Max in the hypothetical grave of this whole YouTube debacle.
So on with Spencer, did you want to, like, talk or anything?
No, I don't have anything to say to her. I mean, not disrespectfully, but no, it's Max I got the problem with. Fair. It's Max I got the problem with.
What problem you have with him?
Well, one, this is his damn channel. And he shouldn't be relying on anybody else on what's said on this channel. This is his channel. And he has a responsibility of what happens on this channel.
True.
Because it's his name on this channel.
Yeah, but with his channel, does he have the right to platform other people if he wants to?
I am not saying he can't platform anybody. Did I ever say that? Did I ever say that? And if this is up their case that they may or may not have, because I haven't seen the proof, guess whose responsibility is? It's his.
And I'm sure he's aware of that.
And you know what? It's also there so everybody can get sued.
Yeah, and
he's actually fucking up their case on whatever case they have. Again, I haven't seen the proof. He is fucking up their case by doing this stupid shit.
You have not seen any proofs because he's keeping all the evidence for
Well, then don't talk about it, because how am I supposed to report on something that I can't see the facts of? Because I'm going to tell you now, Lyrics had hella good points. Muda, once again, had hella good points, and you're not listening to them. And every time Muda talks to you for 2 times in a row, I think it was 2 live streams in a row, but 2 times Muda has talked to you, you act like your daddy whooped your ass, and you look like you're about to cry because you know he's right. But yet, you don't do what he says.
So you don't want me to platform the survivors for live streams?
When did I say I don't want them platformed? When did I say I don't want them platformed? Because let me tell you something. You sent your audience to go hunting for this dude and his mother. If something would have happened to them, that would have been on your ass. And then it would have been on their ass for saying the damn name and having these people in the chat hunting his ass down like he's a deer.
Can you give us?
I am not talking to you, honey. I am talking to Max. Respectfully, stay out of it.
Mutahar did give him really good advice about the timeline video. Like the way I keep referring to Max is I said the version I can show my mom. Because my mom doesn't know any of this, any YouTuber or anything. I want something I can show her. It's a clear and concise video. It's something that a lot of people have been asking for.
Basically what normies can watch.
Totally. But you understand, you make videos and stuff, like it takes a long time. You can't necessarily just get it together in 2 weeks. Like it's kind of unrealistic to be like, this is how long it's going to take, when literally every week there's a new page unfolding. Like, hey, this survivor reached out now this week, and this, but now you're talking to a lawyer again. And like, it's not something you can just, I understand. I am an audience member too, who's patiently like, hurry up, dude. Like, but it is also like a thing of, try to be patient. And is it the time frame that you're angry about? Like that he just hasn't hurried up and made it, or is it just the whole thing?
There's a whole bunch of stuff I'm angry about. I don't like how he hides behind his victims either. Or not his victim, but the victim, excuse me. I don't like how he hides behind the victims either. Every time he gets told about the doxing, well, they said that it was okay to do it. You're hiding. This is your channel, Max. You hold responsibility of what goes on in this channel.
I agree.
What are you doing then? Tell me right now. I will be quiet for you to answer and go.
So when we reached out to the lawyer, he told us it would not be beneficial to pursue a case against Camden Gerard Davis because he likely does not have substantial assets. So he recommended that we all go in person to report him to the police station that is in his jurisdiction.
So they didn't tell you to go into the okay, is he still in the same jurisdiction that the crime occurred?
For the most recent survivors, yes.
Okay. Because I was always under the impression you have to go into the jurisdiction that the crime occurred. All right? Then yes, carry your pretty over to that jurisdiction and go, hey, Mr. Police Officer, I have a crime to report. Yes, that's what needs to be done.
Yes,
hell, you might even be able, and because since, COVID and stuff like that, you might even be able to do it over the phone. I don't know. Because I've only dealt, because I know you're in a different state now. You know what I'm saying? But I've had to do it. I've had to do stuff like this before on my own accord. But yes, you need to go to the police of the jurisdiction of where the crime occurred and go, hello, Mr. Officer, can you help me?
Yes, that is what we are doing.
Okay, that should have been done before all these live streams. Even I know that, and I haven't been on YouTube as long as you, dude. Now, granted, I have lived like probably 20 more years of life, but still.
This was a decision by the survivors to come out about Camden publicly.
I get that. I really do get that. But Max, how long have you been chasing predators? How long have you been doing this?
It's been about 4 to 5 years, probably, chasing.
Okay. So 4 to 5 years. So you have experience in chasing down predators, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What bothers me is you didn't have the wherewithal to tell these ladies, hey, listen, we need to go to the police first and file a complaint or file something of like, hey, a crime was committed. What bothers me is you've been doing this for 5 years and you didn't even know to tell them to go to the police first before they say something?
They did. And have you seen my Wayne video?
Well, okay, you're saying names, so I don't. Which video was that?
It's called Wayne.executable.
No, it's
Wayne?
called This Is What Happened to a Child Predator on TikTok.
Yes, that is the YouTube name. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think I did. Give me. Hold on. Did I see it? I don't know. I don't remember. I watched so much. Okay, wait a minute. So I have a question. So you do plan to go to the police, right?
Of course.
So what's the point past that? Because then you're talking court. So then if you go to police and they say, okay, yay, we're going to go get him or whatever, I don't know, live in a dreamland, whatever you want to feel. Are you going to court after that?
I'm unsure about the entire process. I think that's the job of the district attorney, but the survivors would likely appear as witnesses.
Okay. What bothers me is your answer right there. You've been doing this for 5 years and you don't know how the process goes? How many people have you actually caught?
I've never been to court.
Oh, well then that will make sense then. There you go, folks. Okay, there you go.
I'm glad
you're a vigilante for views only. You're a vigilante for views only. Bro, are you serious? I'm not signing no damn NDA. Are you kidding me? What, give you my information so I can see some evidence on a story that we're supposed to believe? Hell no.
Then that's
I
on
don't
you.
know you. I don't know you like that. How do you expect people to say, yeah, I trust Mamamax? I absolutely trust Mamamax. Right after they just said the bad guy's mama's name on and spelled it out in a live stream, I absolutely trust him.
So what are you trying to say exactly?
You're fucking up. That's what I'm saying. You're fucking up, okay? We'll just put it in a nice little box, okay? I can't say it's pretty wrapping, but it's wrapped with a bow on top saying, with a tag, you're up.
Yes, everything is my fault, Xylie.
If they have a case, you're it up. That's what I'm saying.
I disagree.
Yeah, because you're too stubborn. Stop getting past your own way, dude. You're up. Everybody is telling you you're up. If it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a duck. And you're clacking right now.
I guess time will tell, Xylie.
Yeah, time will tell, because I tell you what, you're getting the Onision treatment right now.
And this spiraled things in even further to what I feel like it resulted in that apology video, which will be in the next section, but we have to segue now to quickly to Chud Logic. So Chud Logic has been covering this extensively, and what sets him apart from other channels is he reported on the Discord leaks from the server that contained the evidence. Now, I'm going to be super 100. Chud Logic, please understand that I'm not talking about Chud Logic because I like Chud Logic. Okay? Like, I literally have transparent about my feelings before I go in, but I still think I was able to approach this impartially to some degree. Chud Logic and others have received privacy complaints, so I'm gonna leave the actual video footage of the leaks to his channel and I'll put it in my sources. But because the Discord in particular was something that's private, I don't want to put it on screen. But I'm gonna break down the leak super briefly if you want a Spark Notes if you don't want to watch it, or a Spark Note if you want to go into it with an idea what's going on. There's this guy who comes in and he makes first contact with Red Pagan, which is the person that I mentioned before interviewed Spencer and then deleted it later. Chud Logic goes through all the tactics that the person does to get into the server. Lyrics or whatever his name is, he covers this as well. He accidentally forgot to censor the Discord link to Spencer's personal Discord, and then people started trying to get into it, and someone got into that one as well. The leaker ends up glazing up Max and Spencer in DMs along with some lies to get around the safeguards to get into the server, such as ID, a picture of ID, signing something properly, some of that kind of stuff. In that Discord, they're talking about taking down all of Max's videos in order to have a clean slate for the Camden investigation. They also had a detailed outline of what a cult is at around 59 minutes in Chud Logic's video. They go through it. And then Spencer ends up kicking the leaker out of the server because they found him in Lyrics or whatever his name is, chat, I think, or something, saying that he hadn't in at the server. And the rest will be in Chud Logic's video. And I just know that he uses derogatory, ignorant language in the video. And if you don't like it, there will probably be other content on this eventually. And now we can move on to the last video that Max uploaded, the apology video, the Patreon, and then, we're starting to circle back. Part 2.3, analysis of the apology video. Mamamax has not really been one to substantially backtrack in any way in previous situations, where instead he'll deflect criticism and put his ego first. The apology video does not necessarily change this pattern. The video opens talking about a video called Silence All Survivors that he's planning on making that would contain the apology that many wanted him to include. But he also says that he can't make everyone happy. And a lot of people don't want him to put this video out at all, including survivors. And he actually apologizes to Charlie specifically for confusing his audience, but that's kind of it. He feels that he's kind of confused about all the different opinions that he's been getting. And there's a point where he says he doesn't want to say anything about the general criticisms and how he himself can instead bring up all the wrongdoings of other influencers. Then he's talking about how he wants to make content either once law enforcement has been spoken to and if it gets resolved or if it doesn't end up getting resolved.
Just trying to find the remaining survivors of Camden Gerard Davis. That has always been the goal for this awareness campaign. And while it's worked in some respect, it's also caused a lot of issues. I don't want beef with anyone. I want to communicate openly. I'm trying to communicate with my peers, and I'm trying to listen to dissenting voices, and I'm trying to listen to voices I trust too. And every single person is telling me something different.
And then it ends with this super dramatic edit and statements on Cam Gerard Davis. Again, I'm asking for people, and he again begins to ask people to spread his message. And this ends with a really dramatic hug. Here are my general thoughts. All right. Video opens with Max talking about how he wanted to release his 30-minute video, Silence All Survivors, which in turn is just Max showing that he completely missed the point. The message is in continuation. This message shows the continuation of Max conflating delivering the message and the message itself. Max does not even properly understand the victim's role in the legal process. I'm going to read briefly from this book that I got about restorative justice. I want to say, before I get into it, I want to clarify that I'm not saying that restorative justice is necessarily even possible, let alone appropriate for this type of situation. Restorative justice usually works with the offender and victim working together to resolve trauma. And if this was a full-on cult situation, this would not be the move. Restorative justice does also look at the foundational effects on victims. What happens if there is a resolution and if there's exploitation and things like that? And that's what I'm going to be focusing on. So I want to read from the book. The how and who are important. Who is involved in the justice process and how they are involved is an important part of restorative justice. Our legal system is an adversarial process conducted by professionals who stand in for the offender and the state, referred by a judge. Outcomes are imposed by authorities, laws, judges, or juries, who stand outside the essential conflict. Victims, community members, and even offenders rarely participate in the process in any substantial way. Although restorative justice usually recognizes the need for outside authorities in some cases, imposed outcomes, it prefers processes that are collaborative and inclusive, and outcomes are usually agreed upon rather than imposed. Restorative justice often acknowledges a place for the adversarial approach and the role of professionals, as well as an important role for the state. However, restorative justice emphasizes the importance of participation by those who are in the direct stake in the event or offense, that is, those who are involved, impacted by, or otherwise have a legitimate interest in the offense. It is possible that someone who has been harmed may be helped towards healing when the one causing the harm works towards making things right. Whether concretely or symbolically, many crime victims, however, are ambivalent to the term healing because of the sense of finality or termination that it connotes. This journey belongs to victims. No one else can walk it for them, but an effort to put right can assist in the process, although it can never fully restore. So I'm just talking about the general nature about like how the victim is the one who leads, and this person taking over kind of the concept of like the victim's relationship with the crime is directly against a process of healing, which is what this book is trying to say. The foundational issue for me here is the representation of the result of like a true crime brain rot on content creators. Max is even worse, however, because when people don't have respectful coverage of something, they're looking at it after the fact. Max is doing these practices with this like CSA avant-garde videos, which I'm not gonna like insert here, but he makes literal like pretend scenes of it. Imagine you're watching like a Bailey Sarian video about how like someone got like put in a freezer and then she puts in a little snippet like acting it out. It is not even the worst part because like these videos are not even directly leading to arrests, and then in turn could potentially be putting the evidence at risk of being tampered with. Max even admitted to lying to someone about having one of the predators he targeted getting arrested. And I hopefully will be able to find it in the Discord call.
Have you ever gotten someone arrested?
If I have, then I don't know it.
You went on my podcast to tell me that you've got someone arrested and it was because of your video, just to be clear. Would you like to re-answer that question?
I've been emailed stuff like, hey, you got this guy arrested, congratulations.
You went on and you said, this guy was arrested, it was because of me, it was because of my video. And you told me that 2 years ago.
It's kind of egotistical of me to say. That was my video that did it. I don't know that for sure.
But then you said recently that he fled to the Philippines. So was Sonny ever arrested? Pablo Sonny? Did that ever even happen?
Yes, he did. All we know is that his last location we picked him up from was Mexico. Whether he fled to the Philippines or not, we don't know. We just know he has family there, and that's the most likely destination they would go to, just because.
But he was so he was arrested. That was.
Pablo Sonny? I don't think so. I think he got away.
Dude, what the fuck?
If he was arrested, I have no idea.
Why did you tell me he was arrested? You said Pablo Sonny was arrested and my video did it. Why did you lie to me on my show?
Do you have a clip of that?
Yes. It's in something I've been currently editing.
Yeah, send it to me.
Okay, give me 2 seconds. I think there's even a video on YouTube. Actually, can you just jump in the screen share? I'll just pull it over. Because somebody archived it.
I guess I can hear stuff, but I can't see anything.
That's all you need because the visual is a drawing. Okay, here you go. This is the two clips, contrasting clips of Pablo Sonny. Okay, so obviously one of them is in December 29th, and the other is, December 29th, 2021, and the other is November 27th, 2023. Okay?
Okay.
What is your primary goal is that then? There's no, what's your other,
Well, I guess the question is like, the next getting at is like, okay, so you want to enact this change. What do you hope is the eventual result of your video?
Okay.
Of all this?
So I know there's people out there saying I'm doing it to self-serve. I just want my video back up. I don't give a shit if my video comes back up. It did what it needed to do. The rapist that was in the video is currently in police custody. And
was that as a result of your video, or was that prior to the video?
Yes, it was because of the video. Right. The video was about IMVU and this one predator. I made it about him and him alone.
Kind of use a game, right? You played the game and you exposed this guy.
Yes.
Do you mind walking me through the chain of events that led from your video to him being imprisoned?
Yeah, so I dropped the video. The end of the video is a call to action. Usually all my videos are a call to action, like find him, and we did.
So in this case, find him meant like you didn't know who he was. You wanted his doc so he could go to jail.
All we had was his face and his voice.
Right.
And out of that, I said find him, and then within 24 hours, we found him. And then I started social engineering all of his friends to give me his information, and they did. And then we pegged him. He fled to Mexico. We found where he was in Mexico. Wow. I don't know if the police. He was from Canada, so I don't know if the police asked him to come back.
That's all terrible people are.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if the police asked him to come back, or he went on his own volition, or they forced him to come back. I don't know any of those details. I just know he went back to Canada and was in police custody for a certain amount of time.
So you lied.
So that was what I was told through Instagram posts when I was in contact with his friends.
Max, in another video defending himself, says criticizing his format is because we're not civilized enough for the message. My only other point to say on this is how manipulative the statements on other influencers are. This is something that like Amberlynn Reed, weirdly enough, did recently with the ex's allegations against her. She said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you about all the lies. This is only done to manipulate opinions around you. All it does is attempt to make the speaker seem morally superior. Max considers those that are criticizing him as bad actors. In turn, the act of criticizing him because he thinks the concept of CSA is like morally corrupt, which again, that link is just not actually there. He changes the route of criticism in order to favor him.
So instead of addressing all the random rumors that people make up and responding to criticism and talking about the wrongdoings of other influencers, I'm just going to take accountability for my actions and correct them starting now.
It is really where you place yourself in the narrative that matters, especially when you're facing controversy. Max moves back and forth to where he's placed in the narrative depending on what favorites him. Now we're just going to move to part 2.4, the Patreon response. I gave up on filming because I couldn't finish because I was yapping for like 2 hours straight and I just kind of like didn't have it in me. So you get editing me with no makeup, disheveled, late as hell at night for the rest of it. So now that we're at part 2.4, Max's Patreon response, I'm going to read the post the whole way through and then I'm going to go through kind of my thoughts and points on it. So the post is from Chud Logic's video. It's a screenshot, that's why it's all blurry. It says, for those that remain, despite the recent defamation campaign, your support has been invaluable. Unfortunately, our operations have been severely crippled. So I'm currently seeking local employment, but I remain committed to our film projects in my free time. Here are my current plans. We'll proceed with the documentary on Cam and Gerard Davis after law enforcement has concluded their investigation. An extremely detailed response video, Silence All Survivors, is in the works, revealing certain influencers' actions against us and the survivors we're supporting. Given the sheer volume of attacks, finalizing this project may take months. If there is a specific concerns you want to address, please mention them in the comments. It seems the detractors will continue to drown out our voices with more falsehoods and accusations until we give up. But the truth soon emerges over the horizon. Stay alert and open-minded until you finally see the other side of the story. Theoretically, I could engage in the same manipulative strategies, align with their adversaries, exploit every rumor and accusation ever made about them, orchestrate gossip among our peers to alienate them, and even platform their most abusive ex-partners and past enemies. However, I refuse to engage in such tactics, choosing instead to present facts and let you judge them based on their own merits. Thank you again for believing in us. We will not be silenced. And then I just want to read the comments too. Someone said, just try to live your life the best you can without all this YouTube or film BS. I understand it might be your passion, but Max, you need to ask yourself if it's really worth the backlash and criticisms you will face. I have always respected you and I still do, but at the same time, but not as the same person I once thought you were. Just please do yourself a favor and chill and be a normal guy. Someone else said, why won't you release a proper response towards the accusations with evidence provided? Or at least take real accountability. A lot of us are still here because we want to have faith in you and we are hoping you could set things right. But if that never happens, then I'm afraid you're fumbling a huge portion of your audience, including the ones that were holding out hope for you. And the last comment says, your content has been fabricated this entire time. Until you address this, I cannot see a way for you to possibly redeem yourself. So my general thoughts are as such. I kind of talk about the concept of like how he wants to release the video, the Silence All Survivors video, despite the fact that the victims were saying that they didn't want it to come out. And it really shows the hypocrisy in like what Max has been saying, because he keeps saying like, all I'm doing is for the victims. And when you're criticizing me, you are in turn criticizing the victims and you are silencing them. He always has that quick manipulative switch of, oh, you're just trying to silence survivors. You're talking, you're yelling at me, you're yelling at the survivors, you're coming for the survivors. And if you go back of whatever 20 minutes ago to my like Xylie kind of sequence when she was on the call with Max, that is something that's like super frequently thrown on her. He kept doing that. He was very manipulative towards her over and over again, but she just kept like pushing through. It's still set on targeting primarily those against him, above really at the end of the day being for the victims, despite the fact that most people are genuinely just upset with Max's inability to do justice for these people, as opposed to the fact that he thinks we're all just mad about like a story about someone. I don't even understand what he thinks people are mad at, because clearly there's like a delusion between the reality of the situation and what actually presents itself. Again, he's calling other people manipulative and putting this like moral superiority on himself. And I think that that's something that is like very, very silly. When I think about this kind of concept, we definitely have to kind of like hold Max to the standard that he demands that we hold ourselves to. And I think that that's something that's like very relevant to kind of juggle in this whole scenario, is like Max wants all of this proof about him and what we don't like about him. We provide it directly to him. He then in turn says, this isn't criticisms of me, it's criticisms of my victims. There has been, in this video, we are at about 2 hours of content so far-ish, if not very close. And not once have I been like, everybody is horrible, like all the victims are horrible. It's just there's so much doubt of if there's even like a possibility of it existing almost. That's how crazy this has all been. And even with Spencer, I'm still lending a lot of benefit of the doubt to Spencer in my section on her, because it's just like, clearly something has happened to you. Clearly there's some sort of like deeply intense trauma from something that has gone through and you've run away, and that's clear that you did. And there's like a lot of things that are like demonstrably provable. But at the same time, even with the stuff that's not demonstrably provable, I think at worst, for a lot of it, it can just be some maybe like exaggeration. Even if that's even generous, it could just be a lot of like mixing things up because it was a long time ago. Trauma has a very deep effect on the brain and memory processing. And like, this is just assuming even that like something has like happened or something that's happened that is in contrast to what she was saying, at least. So even then, it's like, what are we really that pressed about? Is Max mishandling the information, Max making nonstop complaint videos about how he doesn't feel like YouTube's being nice enough to him, Max ignoring when evidence against him is put right up in his face, yet for some reason he expects the whole world to immediately fall to their hands and knees and bow when he wants anyone to do anything. He wants commentary channels at his whim. He wants huge creators at his whim, 100 million plus subscriber, 200 million plus subscriber channels. It's like, what are you going for here? So then PewDiePie makes a video. Now what? Now you've got so many more maybe supporters, but at the same time, you will have a lot more detractors. You're going to have eyes are never neutral, and eyes are never going to be inherently 100% negative or positive. And if you can't even handle the criticism from the few eyes that are seeing you now, few still being, to what I recall from Mutahar's video, there were multiple million views on something, like 2 million-ish views per these videos. So it's not like nobody was watching them. It's not like it never saw any traffic. So again, your biggest issue is that things aren't as cut and dry, super perfect, happy like you wanted. Like, it's a bit silly. We can finally move on to the last part of this video, part 3, the sensationalization of serious allegations. So much of this video has been me criticizing Max's character in conjunction with the presentation of evidence. That's that huge rant I just went on in the last section. Here is another foundation and component that Max does not seem to understand. This is affecting those who are victims of CSA as a result of what he is producing for them. But if this Camden thing is like what he says it is, there are now hundreds of victims pulled into this internet circus. And I think even if, pretending, let's say, with the evidence not necessarily being to the level that it should be, not having enough kind of to go forward, this would have never happened if he didn't try to loop in a bunch of influencers and then even after doing that, throw fits and keep deflecting that people don't care about CSA because they don't care about Max specifically. Max and the drive to stop CSA are not mutually intertwined with one another. Those things can be exclusive of each other. And it is very strange that he keeps conflating that, and I don't understand. Even if he says no, that he doesn't, I don't know what the defense would be. I guess it would just be it's because those are my videos. That's the only thing I can think of, but I'm not even sure. I want to actually define a concept from the Little Book of Trauma Healing. This one again, that talks about kind of like that there is collective trauma that can happen. And I think genuinely, besides what happened with Camden, this whole circus with Max is in turn causing another cycle of collective trauma for these people with their internet exposure. But I think some of them are still in the context of being kind of manipulated by Max into thinking that it's him and them against everyone, not that he is acting irresponsibly and really fumbling things as they come in. So this says collective, organizational, shared, and planetary trauma. When a traumatic event or series of events affects large numbers of people, we speak of societal, mass, or collective trauma. The traumatic events may be experienced directly, but trauma can also occur from witnessing or merely hearing about horrific events. Whether direct or indirect, a traumatic group experience can set off widespread fear, horror, and helplessness or anger, impacting an entire region or nation. Organizational trauma is a collective experience that overwhelms the organization's defense and protective structures and leaves the entity temporarily vulnerable and helpless or permanently damaged. The effects are systematic and, if left unaddressed, weaken the organization, compromising its work and long-term health. Shared trauma is when both helping professionals and their clients have experienced the same collective trauma. Within a society, cultural subgroups may experience traumatic events directly, depending on the proximity of threat to the degree in which they identify with the victim of the events. Climate crisis introduces an unprecedented collective challenge to all species on the planet. We have no experience with this threat or type of magnitude. The normal trauma responses we discuss in the next chapter are evident in the responses of individual nations and international bodies. Fight, protective action, flight, denial, spiritualizing, and free/collapse, helplessness/inaction. Harvard psychological professor Daniel Gilbert believes that we do so little about the climate crisis because our brains are attuned to respond strongly to 4 types of threats: personal, abrupt, immoral, and now, which the acronym is PAIN. Climate change rarely triggers any of these, although personal impacts are increasing. What psychologists call eco-anxiety is on the rise in spite of our surface behaviors. Our part of us are aware. So I wanted to read through to the climate part too, just to kind of talk about this concept of like the different reactions. And you've got obviously your fight, flight, fawn, and all those kinds of things, and how like we're aimed to responding to things, and how there is sort of a collective trauma between Max and those that he is covering that I feel like a lot of people aren't actively discussing. Because if we go back to the video brainwash your favorite influencer and we go into the description for that, there is the section that talks about there were like this, not the section rather, but the description that has the letter to Spencer that describes the fact that they apparently share similar trauma. So what happened to Max has happened to Spencer and vice versa or whatever. And then there are going to be perhaps issues with those responses and the level of investment because of the shared trauma. I think Max doesn't understand where he needs to step back because of that shared feeling between the two of them, because of that shared reality between the two of them. Because even just looking at the concept of these forms of trauma and how much harm can come from not understanding the process, it's something that we don't see online. And I feel like it's another component that just makes me feel weird about Max making everything into like little movies. But with that, let's move it to part 3.1, changing the protect the children to other causes. So usually when I discuss the concept of protecting the children on this channel, I'm referring to the Republicans and the use of Christianity in politics to mask other intentions and motives. But this is a different case. So I was going to read a little bit from Jesus and John Wayne. I've read the section I would have read before too, I think. it's definitely like something that I feel like is not necessary this deep in the game, because I ended up talking for 2 hours in advance before this. So I'm going to spare you the time, and you can believe me or not that this is like essentially the summary of what's in this book. But they talk about how Republicans wanted to utilize evangelical Christian churches as their means of keeping the American standard, as to be able to have a consistent growing body of political base through kind of like how the nuclear family stays within itself, and the man controlling the house allows for the sort of opinion to be shared amongst him and his kids to kind of keep that conservatism intact. And I think that that sort of kind of control scheme and this sort of like, because when the Republicans were saying to these people that they were protecting the American identity, you're protecting the way things are now. And when your base is people who benefit greatly from the systems in place that in turn are taking things from others, and then the threat of their comfort has come in, that is something that people really don't want. What they do is to also negate a sense of selfishness, because the last thing people want to feel is selfish. The last thing people want to feel is that they're a bad person. People are innately self-centered to a certain degree, and calling someone a bad person for not caring about kids is like the last thing a lot of people want to hear, and is why it is such a powerful point to attack on. And that is why I believe that Max isn't either able to fully delude himself that he can intertwine himself with the innate cause, despite the fact that if he presents CSA as a sort of joke, and he presents like doing these things online and online action as something that like really leads to nothing, then nobody's going to want to do it. But what he's done is now he has taken the intention protect kids as something where he can throw away any criticism. The selfishness comes in when we're talking about his reputation and the scrambling attempt to save it before anything else. Max's reputation, Max's ability to make films, even though the presentation of these films is not good, and I'll put a clip in Mutahar too talking about this.
Now give yourself a second to breathe. These are very serious allegations. These type of allegations require absolute concrete proof, and not a YouTube video, okay? This should be reviewed by lawyers, sent to police agencies. This is serious stuff. And so when we get to this, who is Max claiming to target? He talks about Camden. Now here, Max gives full names, plays loud music, and again, I have to frame by frame analyze, which for a serious topic like this, please stop the theatrics. Present this with the respect it deserves. There's a possibility that he will use anonymous accounts on various internet forums to spread rumors or false information about the victim or filmmakers. Any proof of a disinformation campaign, maybe some screenshots of his various accounts and postings, none of that are provided here. He may attempt to engage drama-oriented media sources, leveraging their platforms to spin a narrative in their favor. To my knowledge, no one in that drama-specific community has been contacted by this person. And that also said, this isn't drama, Max. This is a serious crime we're discussing. And that's what bugs me. Why are we not treating this with actual respect? This isn't a fucking Netflix show. This is a serious, heinous crime. He has a history of spreading disinformation to deflect the allegations against him. Again, where's the proof? Any links to his posts online or his accounts that are spreading this disinformation? In this video, nothing like that's given.
It is something that just shouldn't be done in this way. And there is just no way to pick criticism at him without deflecting it. He's done it in every single circumstance. You see how it's his immediate instinct. That's why he was doing that with Xylie. Because now Max has built a campaign and reputation for chasing fame, being selfish, and acting in a way that's manipulative. And like, for what? Because people aren't responding exactly the way that you want? Max is not understanding that no matter how noble the cause, no one ever owes you their time. No one owes you anything. And that is just a simple fact of life. And the style aside, the content aside, the flagrant irresponsibility and going this far and using ChatGPT as legal advice when you can't even cover yourself is being and being directly asked by survivors to stop on this pursuit and you not doing it means you don't care as much as you make it seem. Like, there's genuinely no other way around it, I feel like. So now we move into part 3.2, the use of stylistic elements in messaging. So I've been one to be very critical of people and how they deliver messages. This is why I'm very critical of the true crime community, for example. And I feel like because of this criticism that I frequently brought in, it would be somewhat hypocritical for me not to talk about it here. And there's a reason why presentation matters and professionalism is relevant in conversations. And this part is just kind of ending this whole conversation with a bit of my opinion and self-insertion, which is why I left it to the end. And you can conclude here. There's just a little conclusion at the end next if you want to step out. But I'm personally someone who thinks of the meta around things. I'm someone that I will look at different situations online and I will think of them from a context of not being involved or not being involved in the surrounding communities. So, for example, when we're talking about something like iDubbbz as content cop on Tana Mojo, I just imagine, how would I explain to somebody how we got here? So there was this guy who was 28 and he was making content that was offensive to be offensive. And this girl who also made offensive content, but not really on purpose. She was kind of just dumb and really young, like 17, 18. She starts attacking him for making offensive content kind of on purpose. And then you know what I mean? Like it's a layer when you're trying to explain these things. And I don't want to go on about that too long, obviously, because that's not relevant, but I'm just giving you an example. When I'm thinking about the context, this is how I would describe Mamamax. I want to know if this makes anybody else step out in the way that it does for me when I say it out loud. And I wrote it down, so I'm going to read it off of here verbatim so I can see what it says. So it says, this whole situation stemmed from a man who has exhibited his mental health online in a bizarre way with allegations of his own. His biggest point of focus is the filmmaking aspect, and after trying a few different types of videos, he's set on finding predator circles online. He does this by using voice modulators, then doxing these people in YouTube videos, and is unclear when law enforcement is involved. Then he demanded an entire social media platform and large influencers to help him just on the basis of intention. When that did not work, he began fighting everybody on the internet and began to show evidence or attempt or conflate evidence with what is actually present. Then bigger internet sleuths online really started to get involved. And then now you have this guy who's been making more videos about how he's mad that influencers aren't responding in the way that he wants, than doing anything with these survivors publicly, which is what he said he would do and was the goal of his channel in the first place. And I think when we think of it that way and as objectively as possible, that's what it begins to really boil down to at this point. And I think I need to say too, I have no stakes in the game. Actually, arguably, it would make more sense based on my moral standpoints and positions to side with Max than those who are against him. I do not usually morally align. I talked about this in the Def Noodles video too. When I'm morally aligning with the commentary bro community, that is genuinely because this person is wrong on all fronts, I think. When there's very little nuance that can be really taken into account to be yeah, he's right. It's no, because someone who's goal is to protect kids, it's CSA survivors, and listens to survivors and believes them because it's more often that they're right than they're not, and is taking that in, and it's that's something that I tend to be kind of leaning more towards, rather than I'm going to disregard any allegation unless you borderline have a video of it happening almost. It's that's that distinction, and how I still align, I feel is also something to take into account. So we can finally conclude the video. This is so exciting. In conclusion to the longest video I have ever made, thank you for watching. We went through Mamamax's early career and who he was. We briefly went through Spencer's allegations. Then we went through the whole YouTube circus and the collapse of Mamamax, and how Nicholas Deorio, Mutahar, Some Ordinary Gamers, Xylie Gets Real, and Chud Logic and Lyrics as well, and a couple of other channels all came together, interviewing him, trying to help him, to kind of trying to have him show his ass, and moving into this process of now making exposed videos on him, to detracting from him, and even his own audience that are still on Patreon of all things, paying audience members, kind of coming against him. So now we are here at the end. links, sources, ways to support the channel, all that kind of stuff, all down below, along with an email to suggest content. Thank you so much for getting this far into the video. Thank you to my current members and patrons. I love y'all. I am dumbfounded that this is so incredibly complex and long. Please suggest me other video topics, because I actually haven't really been able to think of anything, because this has genuinely consumed my whole life for this entire month so far, and I don't know what to do. So I love you all. I love anybody who has been harmed by this. All of you have an amazing day, and I will see you when I see you. Bye.
Sure is nice driving my 2020 Chevy Silverado.
Hi, Squidward.